In 2020, Tanzania's Serengeti National Park was hit by a relentless drought that lasted 3 long months. Not a single drop of rain fell on the parched land, and the once green plains turned into a scorched desert where every blade of grass turned yellow and crunched underfoot. The 45-degree heat dried up all living things, and the few remaining water sources turned into dirty puddles, unable to quench the thirst of even the most resilient animals. In this harsh world, a family of lions, an adult male, a female, and their little cub struggled to survive, clinging to the last glimmers of hope. Every morning, a majestic lion named Cujo, whose thick mane fluttered in the hot wind, led his family across the scorched fields in search of water. His powerful paws left marks on the cracked earth, and his eyes scanned the horizon intently. The female, later named Nala, walked alongside her cub, shielding him from the scorching sun with her body. Their baby, weak and thin, could barely keep up with his parents, his steps uncertain, his eyes dull from hunger and thirst. The drought spared no one. Antelopes, zebras, and even buffaloes fell one after another, unable to withstand the heat and lack of water. Days turned into weeks, and the situation became increasingly desperate. The puddles that had recently provided at least some moisture had dried up, leaving only a crust of mud. Cujo, Nala, and their cub wandered the desert plains, their hearts filled with anxiety about the future. The cub grew weaker with each passing day, its little paws trembling and its breathing becoming more and more ragged. Nala, despite her own exhaustion, desperately searched for any food she could find, but the prey had disappeared, as if it had vanished into the scorching air. One morning, when hope was almost gone, Cujo noticed a faint glimmer of water in the distance. The family gathered their last strength and rushed to a small depression where a shallow puddle remained. The water was murky, barely enough for one. Nala bent down to drink, but her weakened body couldn't take it. She collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily. A few moments later, her breathing stopped. Cujo let out a heart-wrenching howl, full of pain and despair, while the puppy clung to his mother's cooling body, not understanding why she was no longer moving.
Nala's death was a heavy blow, but Cujo couldn't afford to give up. He looked at his cub, whose eyes were filled with fear and exhaustion, and realized he had to act. The cub, who would later be named Simba, was too weak to go on. His thin legs buckled, and he fell onto the scorching ground. Without hesitation, Cujo grabbed the cub by the scruff of his neck and carried him across the rocky desert to the only paved road crossing the Serengeti. He hoped that people would notice them there, their last hope for salvation. The heat dried Cujo's throat, and every step caused pain in his emaciated body. But he kept going. Vultures circled in the sky, their shadows gliding across the ground, as if foreshadowing tragedy. But Cujo did not look up. His gaze was fixed on the road. Finally, a dusty jeep belonging to the reserve rangers appeared in the distance. There were 3 employees in the car: experienced ranger Elias, his assistant Zara, and young intern Joshua. They patrolled the area every 2 hours, recording the effects of the drought. When Cujo ran out into the middle of the road carrying Simba in his mouth, the rangers froze in surprise. They expected aggression, as lions can be dangerous when desperate. But Cujo carefully placed the cub in front of the car and backed away, his eyes pleading for help. Elias, who had worked in the Serengeti for over 10 years, had never seen anything like it. Joshua, holding binoculars, saw that Simba was barely breathing, his small body motionless. Zara wasted no time grabbing the first aid kit, while Elias slowly got out of the car, carefully watching the lion's behavior. Elias cautiously approached Simba and checked his pulse. The cub's heart was beating weakly, but he was alive. Zara brought a bottle of water and carefully poured a few drops into the lion cub's mouth. Cujo stood aside, keeping his eyes on the people, but showing no aggression. The rangers realized that time was short. Simba needed to be taken urgently to the reserve's medical center, an hour's drive away. Joshua carefully lifted the cub and placed him in the back seat, while Elias kept an eye on Cujo, who, to their surprise, ran ahead of the jeep, as if showing them the way. The road was difficult. The asphalt was scorching hot, and the air was so hot that Zara was drenched in sweat despite the open windows. Cujo kept up, his powerful paws kicking up clouds of dust. After 40 minutes, They arrived at the medical center, where veterinarians Layla and Samuel were already waiting for them. The rangers handed Simba over to the specialists, explaining the situation. Cujo remained behind the fence, pacing restlessly from side to side, his eyes fixed on the center's door. Layla quickly hooked Simba up to an IV, administering saline solution and nutrients. Samuel examined him, cleaning minor wounds and checking his vital signs. After several hours of intensive care, Simba began to recover. He was able to stand up and even took a few steps, which brought smiles to the faces of the rangers and veterinarians. Cujo, hearing the faint growl of his cub, let out a low roar of relief. In the following hours, Simba continued to recover. Layla reported that his pulse had stabilized and his body temperature had returned to normal. Cujo, still standing behind the fence, refused the food Samuel offered him until he was sure his cub was safe. Finally, Elias brought a piece of fresh meat and a bowl of water and placed them by the fence. Cujo and Simba, who had been released to his father, began to eat and drink, regaining their strength. The tension eased, and sincere gratitude appeared in Cujo's eye. The next day, Simba was already walking confidently, and Cujo, as if understanding that his son was fine, growled softly, encouraging him. Together, they left the center and headed back to the savanna. The rangers stood at the gate and watched them go, hoping that the lions would survive the drought. In the days that followed, Elias, Zara, and Joshua spotted Cujo and Simba near the center. They brought them water and food, leaving it at a safe distance. Simba, having regained his strength, began to play in the dust, bringing smiles to the rangers' faces. The story of Cujo and Simba quickly spread throughout the Serengeti. Elias named the lion Cujo, which means born on Monday, and the cub was named Simba in honor of his resilience. Visitors to the reserve asked to see the lions, and some even photographed them from a distance as they rested under an acacia tree. For the rangers, Cujo and Simba became a symbol of hope and trust. Every time they passed by the places where the lions appeared, they stopped to check if they were okay. The drought continued, but Cujo and Simba, thanks to the support of the people, held on. They learned to recognize the patrol cars and sometimes followed them, as if to thank them for their help. This story became a legend in the Serengeti, a tale of a father's love for his son, of human compassion, and of the strength that allows one to survive even in the harshest conditions. Cujo and Simba proved that even in the desert savanna, where life seems impossible, trust and care can work wonders. Thank you for reading this story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel to learn more about the wonders of wildlife.